everyone. So my background is a little bit different today, as you might notice. I am at my parents' house, taking a little trip, enjoying some time with family. So this is my parents' kitchen. So we are making, for those of you who don't know, we're making a fresh fruit tart. So actually for this week, we're calling it a red, white, and blueberry tart. Because as you might imagine, the reason for this is 4th of July. So I have some strawberries and some blueberries that we're going to be using for our fruit to get the red and the blue part down. And then we're going to be making a nice vanilla pudding. So that's going to be the white part of our tart. So we're basically making a pie crust. Then we're going to make a pudding to fill the inside. And then we're going to put red and strawberries and blueberries on top to get that red, white, and blueberry feel to it. So let me tell you what we posted the ingredients in our event. So hopefully you guys have everything that you need. But we'll go ahead and go over them briefly now so you can gather everything that you're going to need to make this. So we are going to make our crust first. It's going to be the first thing that we're going to do. So let's just talk briefly about those ingredients. What we're going to need for that is part of an egg. So for the whole recipe, you're going to need 1 egg. So make sure you have 1 egg out. We're also going to need flours. So a 1/2 cup and 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour and a 1/2 cup and 1 tablespoon white flour. If you don't have whole wheat flour, I know a lot of stores are out of it right now. You can just use white flour. That's totally fine. And we're going to need 1 tablespoon of sugar in our crust. And oh, hey, Lila. Awesome. Great to see you guys. And then we're going to need some butter, 6 tablespoons of butter. And let's see, that's it. Ice water. So I've got, where'd it go? I just put a little pitcher with some ice and some water so I have nice cold water. So that's what we're going to need for our crust. So go ahead and make sure you guys have all that handy. As far as equipment goes, I'm using a bowl and a whisk for both the crust and the pudding. So that way, as you guys know, my motto is as few dishes as possible. And then you're going to need some sort of pie pan. So at Kids Table, we make these in little tarts, little tart pans so that you can, everybody can have their own individual one. But since I'm making this at home, I'm going to use a big pan. You can do it in cupcake tins as well. Not sure how many this would make, probably 10. But I'm making it in a big, this is probably a 9-inch baking dish. So this recipe will also make like 6 4-inch tarts. So whatever pan you want to use is totally fine. So we're going to use this, and we don't need a rolling pin. So we're going to press our dough into our pans. That makes it a lot easier to work with. Oh, my oven's preheated. So great. So that's the equipment that we're going to need. Also, we are going to need to cut up our butter chunks. So you're going to want a cutting board and either a butter knife, or I'm going to use my wavy chopper. Where to go? Here it is. You're going to want a chopper or a butter knife to cut up the butter. So as my oven beeping reminded me, go ahead and preheat your oven to 375. That's what we're going to bake our crust at. And then make sure you have those ingredients out, your flours, your ice water, your butter, your egg, and your sugar. And then make sure your hands are clean. We're going to have to clean our hands again after we crack our egg, but start with clean hands. And let's get going because we got to get this in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and give my hands a quick wash, even though I just washed them. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to give you guys a chance to settle in. Make sure you double check your ingredients. And again, the ingredient list is posted in the Facebook event. If you guys want to look through the whole thing and double check. And then get your bowl and your whisk out, and we're going to get started in just a minute. Okay. So let's go ahead, and first things first is we're going to crack our egg. Now our egg, a little bit of it is going in our crust, and a little bit of it is going in, the rest of it is going in our filling. So, by the way, as you guys know, I'm with the Kids Table. If you guys are just joining us, my name is Elena. I'm the founder of the Kids Table, and I'm super happy to be here making a red, white, and blueberry tart for you guys. You know what? No, that's a good question, Nicole. The egg does not need to be separated. We're going to crack the whole thing into, I've got a little glass. You can use a small mixing bowl, a little measuring pitcher, you know, whatever you have handy. So good egg cracking technique, guys, I know we've done this before in here, but just in case, is you actually crack the egg on a flat surface. Okay, not on the edge. I did this for a very long time, but that actually makes it more likely that you're gonna get shell in your egg, which is no big deal if it happens, but it's nice to minimize the risk. So go ahead and tap it gently but firmly. So we don't wanna smash the egg, but we do wanna crack it on a flat surface. And then you have a crack, right there, you see the crack I made? And then I'm gonna very gently open up, just put the tips of my thumbs in that crack and open it up into my cup or measuring pitcher or little bowl or whatever you have handy. So we are mixing the yolk and the white together. Some recipes do call for separating yolk and white. We don't need to do that in this one. By the way, if you do end up with a little piece of shell in there, you can use half of the eggshell to fish it out. It's almost like it attracts it like a magnet. It'll help really scoop up any bits of shell. I don't have any in mind, but you can do that if it happens to you. Happens to me all the time. All right, so now we have, even if you didn't get, I got egg white on my fingers. Even if you didn't, you should wash your hands because the eggshell itself can carry salmonella, okay? So that is bacteria. You don't want to eat it. So just wash your hands and then come back and we'll whisk our egg up, okay? All right, my hands are so clean now. Where did I put my towel? Here it is. Okay, so now we're gonna whisk this up a little bit, and then we're gonna put it to the side. Of course, my cup is so small I can't turn my whisk really, so I'm just gonna do this. It's kind of fun. So I'm just gonna whisk it up and then we're gonna set it to the side because we're not gonna add our egg yet. We're gonna mix our dry ingredients first. Of course, now I've made my whisk all eggy, but I'm not gonna worry too much about that. I'm still gonna use my whisk to mix up my dry ingredients. Okay, so go ahead and whisk this up till the yolks and the whites are nice and combined. See, it's a nice, beautiful pale yellow. And then I'm just gonna tap as much egg off my whisk as I can because I'm gonna use this for mixing my dry ingredients. All right, because as I told you guys, the fewer dishes, the better. That's my motto. Okay, so put the egg off to the side. I'm gonna go ahead and get out my mixing bowl, and we're gonna get our dry ingredients in our bowl first. So you can use a wooden spoon to mix your dry ingredients. Sometimes I'll use a fork. In this case, since we need the whisk again anyway, I'm just gonna use the whisk. So we need 1/2 cup plus 1 tablespoon of each flour, of whole wheat flour and white flour. So we like to use both flours whenever we can because whole wheat flour has a lot more nutritional value than white flour. So if we can, if we can get away with using all whole wheat, we do. Like we made graham crackers recently, we used all whole wheat for that, which is great. Ooh, this is my parents' scoop is a measuring cup, look at that. So, wow, yeah, 1/2 cup plus 1 tablespoon of each flour. And as I mentioned, if you guys don't have whole wheat flour, don't worry, you can use all white flour, okay? So I know that I was surprised at how many times I've gone to the store recently and not seen any whole wheat flour. So make sure when you guys are measuring flour that you're not packing it down, okay? We've talked about this. Whenever you measure flour, you want it to be loosely packed. Okay, because flour compresses, and so if you press it down, you're gonna fit way more into your cup than the recipe intends for you to have, and then your dish will be drier, right? So for example, so I did a 1/2 cup, and now I'm doing 1 tablespoon. So instead of smashing this, I'm just gonna gently level it off. So that means it's loosely packed. Okay, So I have a half cup plus 1 tablespoon whole wheat flour in my bowl. And now I'm gonna get my white flour. Oh, and there's a nifty measuring cup in here too. I am a fan of how my parents set their baking ingredients up here. So I'm gonna measure out a half cup again. Make sure I can see the line. And again, nice and loosely packed. So a half cup, and then I need 1 tablespoon. And again, not packing it down, loosely leveling it off. Okay, so far, I have a half a cup plus 1 tablespoon whole wheat flour and a half a cup plus 1 tablespoon white flour in my bowl. Now we are gonna add 1 tablespoon of sugar. So our dough, our crust, is actually not gonna be very sweet, right? Because there's gonna be 1 tablespoon of sugar in our entire pie crust. But don't worry, our pudding is gonna be nice and sweet, and of course our fruit on top is gonna be very sweet and delicious. So no measuring scoop in the sugar, but I've got my awesome measuring spoon right here. I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon of sugar. Again, full scoop, make sure to level it off. Okay, so we've got both flours and our sugar in our bowl, and now we're gonna mix it up. So this is why I think whisks or forks are great for mixing dry ingredients, because you know it's powdery. So you really get the different, like in a fork, it would be the tines of the fork, and here, I don't know if that's tines of the whisk, I don't know what those are called. I should Google that. But anyway, it's really mixing it up nicely and getting all of those dry ingredients nice and combined. Okay, now it's time for our butter. So we want our butter to be, you know, not softened, right? So we actually like to put cold butter in here. Some recipes, when you're making frosting or something, you want it to be nice and smooth and creamy. Sometimes cookie recipes call for softened butter. Here it's actually better for the butter to be hard because you work it into the mixture to leave little bits of solid butter that will melt in the oven. And then they give it a little bit of flakiness to our crust, right? So I'm gonna get my butter out of the fridge. And then we wanna chop it up. So this is 6 tablespoons of butter, which is 3/4 of a stick of butter. And you know, you want to try to not handle it too much because your body heat will melt the butter. Because I can already feel the grease from the butter on my hands just from picking it out of the wrapper. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up into little cubes. Probably cut my stick in half first. These choppers, by the way, are awesome. This is what we use always for cutting stuff with kids. But a butter knife will work great. I mean, it is butter, right? So butter knife logically will work very well as well. So we just want to cut this into little cubes, like about the size of a pea, you know, like a green pea or a kernel of corn. And then as you cut it up, you can just toss it right into your bowl. Whoop. And it'll stick together a little bit. That's totally cool. Okay, so it's kind of like you're cutting it into sticks first, right? And then cutting the sticks again into little cubes. Okay, perfect. And second half. Flip it over, do the sticks, and then do the cubes. And remember, if you haven't already preheated your oven, make sure your oven is preheating to 375. That's what we're gonna cook our crust at. Now, the filling itself does not go in the oven. So the only thing we need the oven for is cooking our pie shell, basically, our tart shell. And then the filling is like a pudding, like I mentioned. So we're gonna just cook that on the stovetop. It's kind of like a custard. All right, so let's go ahead and get this last little bit of butter cut into chunks. Whoop. Okay. So now I have all 6 tablespoons of butter in here. I'm gonna put my cutting board off to the side. I am gonna need that again for my strawberries. Oh, okay. So now the whisk won't work that well, but we do want to just coat the butter with our dry ingredients, okay? So just as a recap, for those of you who are just joining us now, we're making a red, white blueberry tart for, as you might guess, 4th of July. And we're making our crust right now. So we have ½ a cup plus 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour, ½ a cup plus 1 tablespoon of white flour. We have 1 tablespoon of sugar, and then I just added 6 tablespoons of butter cut up into cubes. So now you can see that I've got my butter. Each cube is kind of coated with our dry ingredients. So now I'm going to use my fingers and just kind of smash them up just a little bit to make the butter pieces just a little bit smaller. Now we want to hold the butter as little as possible because, like I said, our body heat will melt the butter. And we want our butter to have, we want little bits of butter still when we put our pie dough in the oven so that those little pockets of butter melt and make for a delicious, light, kind of a little bit flakier crust. So when you make your crumbles, you just kind of run them through your fingers like this, very briefly, and then drop them. You know, so we don't want to like hold it and smash it like that. And ultimately, we just want to have, our dough is gonna look kind of crumbly, like almost like breadcrumbs. That's what we're going for. And don't worry, we're gonna add liquid. We're gonna add a little bit of egg, and we are gonna add some ice water. And that's what's gonna bring this together. So this is very similar to a pie dough. A little bit different. A lot of pie doughs don't have, it's like a cross between a pie dough and like a sugar cookie dough is what this pie crust is. Or tart crust, I should say. Red, white, and blueberry tart. Okay, so I think mine is looking pretty good. I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like. How's your dough coming along? You getting those crumbles? I mean, my hands are real, your hands are gonna get dirty, guys. But don't worry, because we still have to press our pie crust into our pan, okay? So our hands are gonna get even dirtier. And actually, we probably should have already greased our pan because we're gonna have to wipe our hands off to grease our pan. That's okay. Okay, so let me show you what mine looks like. And I think I'm ready to add my liquid. So here we go. So you can see it's just kind of crumbly. It looks almost like coarse breadcrumbs. So that's what we want. So still little bits of butter that are solid, right? And then the rest is kind of blended into our dry ingredients. So now what we need to do is we need to add 2 tablespoons of our ice water, and we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of egg, okay? So the rest of the egg, don't get rid of it because the rest of the egg is gonna go in our pudding or our custard to fill our shell, tart shell, I can speak. Okay, so we're gonna do 1 tablespoon of egg. So I'm just gonna dig right in here, fill up 1 tablespoon. And then I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons of ice water. Where to go? Over here. 2 tablespoons of ice water. We can always add more if we need it. And the reason we do ice water is, again, to try to keep our butter from melting before we can get it in the oven, okay? So if you put something that's, you know, the cold, it'll just help keep the butter colder. Makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna use my whisk first to just get the wet ingredients I added mixed in a little bit. And then I'm gonna use my hands to try to form this into a dough ball. Okay, it looks pretty dry. Like it looks like I did not, you know, that doesn't look like it's coming together that much, right? It will though once I press it together. So that's gonna be the real test here, is my dough is ready when I can press it together and it will hold its shape, it will stay together. Okay, so let's see if I can do that, if I can form this into, so it already is a little bit, right? Like I can press it together and I have this little bit of a dough ball here. Let's see if I can get the whole thing to come together. I might need to add just a little bit more ice water. Yeah, so it's almost there, but it's a little dry. So I'm gonna add just a few drops, okay? Because the thing is if you add more than that, then, oh no, my dough's too wet, then I have to add more flour, right? Okay, so I just added barely a drizzle. So now I'm gonna make sure that gets all absorbed, and I'm gonna just get a dough ball going. And again, we don't wanna handle it more than we need to, because we don't wanna melt that butter. So I'm almost there, right? I have most of my dough, but I still have some loose crumbles in here. Still feels a bit dry, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more. Again, just a few more drops. Whoa! Uh-oh. Hopefully I didn't get too much in and dribble down the side. I think it'll be okay though. Let's see. Okay. Now remember guys, this is starting to smell really good, but there's an ingredient in here that you're not supposed to eat raw, okay? Anybody remember what went in here that you don't want to eat raw? Maybe it comes from a chicken. Maybe we put it in this glass and whisked it up. So there's raw egg in this, so we don't want to be tasting our dough. And once we're done handling it, we definitely want to wash our hands. Okay, so now look at this. I've got a nice dough ball. So this is what you want it to look like, okay? So it's not wet at all. Like it's on the drier side of dough, but it's staying together nicely, and it's cracking when I press it together, but not too much. Okay, I can hold it in, it holds its shape. All right, so this is what we're gonna press into our pie pan. So before we do that, we wanna grease our pan. So if you want, you can spray it with a little non-stick spray. I'm gonna rub my pan with a bit of butter because I don't think I have any non-stick spray here. So that'll work too. You can just take a stick of butter, rub it around to just give the pan a nice light grease. So of course, before I go opening the fridge here at my parents' house, I'm gonna wash my hands so I don't get raw egg all over everything in the kitchen. I think they would appreciate that. Okay, so now let me get that butter out of the fridge. And I've got my pie pan. Isn't this a beautiful dish? I'm so excited. And I'm gonna take a little bit of butter and I'm just gonna rub it. Just a very light grease around this dish, just to try to help keep our dough from sticking. Okay, great. So now we're ready to take our dough and we're gonna push it. Let me move this so you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, we're gonna push this into our pie pan here. So you really need to, so this is like the alternative to actually rolling it out. So you can definitely do that, but it takes a bit more work. And this might be easier for younger kids. So you do need to make sure that you're pressing it evenly, okay? So you want to cover the whole bottom of the pan, and you don't want some parts of your crust to be really thick and others to be really thin. But you can just keep moving, turning the pan around. See, right now it looks like this, right? And I'm just keep working with my thumb and my fingers, just pressing the dough into the pan and slowly spreading it across the bottom of the pan and up the sides. See, it's already starting to spread nicely, but I want to go all the way up. Maybe not all the way to the top of the sides, but definitely, because this is a pretty high, you know, it's probably 2 inches high. We're gonna go at least halfway up, at least. And make sure, see there's edges, you know, there's like a, I guess it's not a corner because it's a circle, but you know the edge where the sides of the pan meet the base, you definitely want to press into that because you don't want your pie crust to be really thick where they meet. So use your thumbs to really press into those, you know, kind of corners, those rounded edges. Okay, this is looking quite good. My middle was a little thick, so I just used my hands to push into the middle and out. So see, I'm getting there. It's going up the sides now. And like I said, about halfway up is what we're going for. With mine, because my edges, my sides are so high. Okay. I think we're good. Look at this, I'm almost there. And the good news is sometimes you do this and you're like, oh no, I made a hole. Do you see I made a hole in mine? No big deal. You just use your fingers to press the dough back and fill the hole. No problem. You won't even be able to tell. Okay, so I think my crust is looking perfect. So you can even take, see mine is a little higher up on this side. See, it goes way all the way to the top and a little lower over here. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of that dough, right? And just do a little repair work. Just to make it, doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, to make it kind of even all around. Okay. So this is ready to go in the oven. So before we put it in the oven, I am gonna get a fork and I'm just gonna dock it. I'm just gonna put a few little holes around the bottom, just in case it wants to get a little air in the oven. So we'll just do a few holes like that. I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so just a few little holes with a fork. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the oven. It should take about 10 minutes. We just want, there is egg in here, so we do need to make sure it's cooked all the way through, but it's very thin. So I don't think it's gonna take more than 10 minutes. We'll wait till it's nicely browned. So I'm gonna set timer for 10 minutes and we'll see what it looks like. All right, so it's on for 10 minutes. I'm gonna wash my hands again because as you guys know, I have raw egg in my hands. Our dough for our tart is now in the oven and now we get to make our pudding. So wash your hands, meet me back here, and we'll go over our pudding ingredients and get everything ready to go. Okay, so we make pudding in a way that is a little bit untraditional, okay? So we add an ingredient that you don't find in most pudding and custards, and that is cream cheese, okay? So the reason we do this, actually it started because when we make pudding, so in person, when we do in-person classes for kids, a lot of our classes are an hour long, okay? So you try to make pudding and you know, nobody wants to eat warm pudding. I mean, it tastes good, but you know, it's kind of thin and you know, you have to like cool it in the fridge. And we don't have time to like make it and cool it. So we started whisking in, cream cheese at the end, like right after we kind of make the custard, take it off the heat, whisk cream cheese in, it thickens it, it cools it, and And it turns out that we love the flavor. So it adds somewhat of a slightly different flavor than you get in traditional pudding, but it's become the way we make pudding at kids' table. So even though we're not in a 1-hour class here, we're still gonna do it this way. The cream cheese doesn't cool it completely, okay? And there is one downside, which is you really need to use your muscles because you need to get the little bits of cream cheese to kind of melt. You have to whisk pretty vigorously to get the little bits of cream cheese to melt into the custard. But you know, hey, you're earning your dessert, right? That's how I like to see it. So let's go ahead and gather all of our pudding ingredients. So I'm gonna mix my pudding right in the pot that I'm gonna make the custard in, because like we talked about, the fewer dishes, the better, right? So I've got my pot. We do need a whisk. Mine is covered in dough, but I'm just gonna give it a quick rinse. There's nothing on here that, you know, we're cooking our custard anyway. So I'm just gonna get the little bits off really quickly, and then I'm gonna use this to stir my custard. So I've got my pot, small pot, I've got a whisk. So we need the rest of our egg, right? So we took 1 tablespoon out already for our crust. We have the rest of our egg here. We need half a cup of milk, okay? So you can use, by the way, we make this with coconut milk. I've made it before with, at home I love to use cashew milk. I make my own cashew milk. You could totally do this with that. You could probably do, I mean, rice milk tends to be a little thinner, but I think you could do that, oat milk. The thing you want to watch out for is make sure you don't use a milk that's sweetened or flavored, because we're adding sugar to our pudding. So if you're putting in a milk that's sweetened or flavored, it's going to change. It might make your pudding too sweet. Okay, but I think coconut milk and regular milk and probably like a homemade cashew milk, those would be, or like a macadamia nut milk, those would be, work really, really well. Okay, so we need our egg. So we're going to go ahead and put this in here. Got the rest of our egg. And then make sure it all comes out. And then we need half a cup of milk. So I've got a measuring cup right here. I haven't measured my milk out yet, but I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Half a cup. Oh. I think that's it. Okay. By the way, this is whole milk. I wouldn't use skim milk because we do want some fat in our custard, but I think a reduced fat milk would be just fine. So we have half a cup of milk. We've got about 2/3 of an egg in here because we took out 1 tablespoon. Okay, and now we are doing 3 tablespoons of sugar. So what I'm gonna do is, because I got, you know, I use this to measure out egg. Definitely don't want to dip my egg measuring spoon into my parent's sugar. That would contaminate the sugar, right? So I'm gonna use, this is a, how adorable is this measuring cup, by the way? So this is a 1/4 cup measuring cup. So there's 4 tablespoons in a 1/4 cup, fun fact, guys. So I'm gonna fill this 3/4 of the way. And I think that'll work just fine. You know, if it's off by just a tiny little bit, I don't think it's a big deal. Okay, so I have 3 tablespoons of sugar. So I've got the rest of my egg, about 2 tablespoons, maybe a little bit more of egg. I've got half a cup of milk. I have 3 tablespoons of sugar. And now we need to do 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Okay, so this is gonna get some thickness to our custard, to our pudding. Okay, and then what else do we need? Oh, a little bit of vanilla for flavor. So I do need to get, let's see. Let me get, see if I can do another. I do need a tablespoon for this, so I'm gonna have to dirty another tool. That's okay. I'm doing the dishes, that was the deal. I get to do my class here. Everybody gets to enjoy fresh fruit tart, red, white, and blueberry tart, and then I'll do the dishes. Okay, so this is cornstarch, so make sure to level, okay? Maybe if we have time later, I can show you a fun trick with cornstarch. We can make oobleck. Okay. Cornstarch is pretty sticky. It really sticks to your fingers. Okay, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch in the bowl. Make sure it all comes out. Okay. Put this away, and now we're gonna do our vanilla. So let's see how much vanilla we need. I think it's a 1/2 teaspoon. Correct. 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Where'd my vanilla go? Here it is. This is a very large jar of vanilla, and it's extra delicious because my dad keeps the vanilla bean in this jar. It smells so good. But vanilla does not, if you guys have tasted vanilla plain, does not taste good plain. So we're just gonna carefully measure out 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. There we go. Okay, so the cream cheese does not go in now, all right? All we have are most of our egg, okay, all but 1 tablespoon of our egg. We have 1/2 cup of vanilla. Whoa, don't put 1/2 cup of vanilla in here. 1/2 cup of milk. We have 3 tablespoons of sugar, and we have 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and 1/2 teaspoon of milk. So go ahead, and before we even put this on the heat, give this a really good whisk to try to break up the cornstarch, right? Mix the sugar. We don't want any clumps. We do not want that cornstarch to cook as a clump, okay? So give this a good whisk till it's nice and smooth, and then we're gonna put it on the heat. And this is very little, so it's gonna thicken very quickly. My guess is probably in about 5 minutes. So, oh, I don't have any butane in my, I've got a little portable burner right here, so I don't have to keep turning around. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this on pretty low heat. We do want to get it to bubble, okay? But if the heat is too high, it will burn on the bottom. You don't want that. Okay. So our cream cheese is out, and we're gonna whisk this in as soon as the rest of our custard is done. So we'll just keep this off to the side. And I think while our crust, my timer only has, my timer only has 50 seconds left on it. I had set it for 10 minutes for a crust, and I think it looks like it's gonna be done. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a hot mitt out, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and take it out as soon as my timer goes off. So then I think a little bit of cleanup is in order. Let's get our work surface cleaned up because we had our dough, which had egg in it. We just assembled our pudding, which had egg in it. Let's do a little bit of cleanup, then we'll prep our fruit for topping. And by the time our fruit's done, probably our custard is gonna be ready for the cream cheese. And we'll be ready to wrap this up, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and get my tart dough out of the oven. Go ahead and check your crust, see if it's ready. I'll show you what mine looks like so you know what to look for. All right, so look at this. So it's lost that raw look completely, right? And it's nice and lightly browned. It's totally firm around the edges. So this is definitely done. So that is what you're looking for in your tart crust. And again, not surprising that it only took 10 minutes. This is very thin, right? We pressed it into the pan very thin. So great, I'm gonna let that sit and cool for a little bit. Now, let's give our pudding, oh my gosh, my pudding already needs to be stirred. So you definitely should check yours if it's on the stove and give it a really good stir. And now that it's cooking, we're actually not gonna do anything else for the next few minutes until our pudding is done. Because if we let it solidify too much on the bottom, it might not come together. So now that it's all heated up, let's just whisk it pretty much all the time. So the whole thing is already starting to thicken. I told you it was such a small amount that I knew it would come together pretty quickly. If you do 2 or 3 times this recipe, it can take a little longer, right? So I'm gonna show you what mine looks like. So it went from really thin milk to, I don't know if you can see. Yeah, you can see. See how it's like so thick that when I move the whisk through it, you can see the bottom of the pan. Like usually with thin liquid, you don't even get to see the pan because the liquid fills in so fast. With this, the liquid is quite thick already, right? Look at that, pudding. So this is done. So what did that take? 5 minutes, 4 minutes? Unbelievable. So I'm gonna turn my burner off and I'm gonna get this towel out because I don't wanna keep it on the hot stove, all right? And now I'm gonna take this cream cheese and I'm gonna whisk it in, okay? And you can kind of use the whisk to break up the cream cheese a little bit. And the heat of the pudding is melting the cream cheese as the cream cheese is cooling the pudding. Do you see what I mean? It's a delicate balance. So you really have to use your muscles here. We want to get as much of those little clumps of cream cheese blended in smooth as possible. And by the way, when you're whisking, it's really best if you keep most of the action in your wrist as opposed to your whole arm. That's how you get really tired out, right? So try to keep as much of the action in your wrist as you can. All right, this is looking pretty good. I want to show you what it looks like. Oh, look at that. See, that's what our pudding looks like. So the cream cheese is nice and melted in. Hopefully yours is working well. Is anybody doing this along with me at home? Is your pudding done? Is your crust out of the oven? Like, let me know what's going on. Give me some, maybe some little heart emojis if you don't feel like typing in the comments, if your hands are dirty or something, or you're too busy whisking cream cheese in. So this is smelling pretty good. All right, so this is nice and smooth. My pudding is ready. So I do want to taste it just a little bit to make sure I like how it tastes, and also I'm gonna see how warm it is. It's not gonna be hot anymore, but my guess is it's still pretty warm. So I just dipped the back of a measuring spoon in here. Okay, maybe touch it. It's just warm. I wanted to make sure I was gonna burn myself. Delicious. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, it's not hot, but it's definitely not cold. So I'm gonna go ahead. Aw, thanks so much. I'm so glad you're here too, Maria. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in a bowl and put it in the fridge to chill. Oh, interesting, you've got a gluten-free crust. It's not close to being done at 10 minutes. I wonder why, because really in this context, I don't think that it would be that different. You know what I mean? The gluten-free crust. That's strange. But I guess just, and it's nice and thin. You used a big pan. Maybe it's not, well, hopefully another 5 minutes or so and it'll get there. Just keep an eye on it that it's not drying out too much. Maybe it also won't color as much as the other ones. You can always break a piece off the top if you want to, you know, kind of see what the texture is and everything. So go ahead and take your pudding and put it in a little bowl. Let's get it in the fridge. We can cover it with plastic all the way, you know, to keep that film from developing on top. We can press a little plastic onto it. And then we'll go ahead and get our fruit ready to top our tart. So go ahead and get a spatula and a bowl or container or something to put your pudding in. And by the way, if you want your pudding to cool faster, what you're gonna wanna do is spread it out in a thin, you know, get it as thin as possible. So if you use a deeper thing like this, it's going to take longer to cool because the pudding is deeper. That makes sense, right? Okay, here's a cute little spatula. So I'm going to tap my whisk off here. And I'm just going to scrape all this pudding into my bowl here. All right. And since we've cooked our egg through, we can lick our spatula. Okay. Actually, since I'm only going to put this in the fridge for a few minutes, I'm not going to bother to cover it. If you were storing this in the fridge for any length of time, you'd want to cover it with plastic wrap and let the plastic wrap rest on the surface of the pudding to keep it from developing that weird film. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do a little bit of cleanup here. I'm gonna cut the fruit and assemble my tart now, but if you guys aren't gonna enjoy your tart for a little while, you might wanna wait and assemble it later. And the reason is that the pudding, the moisture from the pudding can make your crust soggy after about an hour. So, and it's so easy to assemble. If you have the fruit already and your custard's already made and your pie dough's already baked, assembling it doesn't take a lot of time. So if you want to wait and enjoy it like tonight or tomorrow, then you can assemble it closer to the time that you're gonna serve it. Make sense? Okay, so I've got, let me get rid of my measuring tools, my measuring cups. I don't need any of that anymore. Let me get rid of my burner. Okay, have a little more space now to work. And you know what? I'm gonna just wipe up just get some of this dirty flour and everything up off the counter. Okay. There we go. So I cut butter on my cutting board already. And that's totally fine. I don't need to wash my cutting board, it's just butter. So I'm gonna use it to cut my strawberries. So by the way, how's that gluten-free crust coming along? Is it done now? Did it get closer? Hopefully yours is coming out of the oven and looking good. Does everybody's pudding look really good? Did you guys taste it? Is it delicious? Fingers crossed, thumbs up, smiley faces, yum faces. Those all work. And let me know if you guys have any questions about anything. And I do want to know how that gluten-free crust ends up turning out. So while I wait to hear from you guys, I'm going to go ahead and cut our berries. So I have blueberries here. We're not going to cut those. We're going to leave them whole. And I have strawberries. So what I'm going to do is, there's two ways that you can hull the strawberry, which is getting rid of these greens, right? Because we don't want them on our pie. You can just grab all the greens together and kind of twist and pull at the same time. And if you do that, lots of times you can actually get the whole thing off. And this is the smallest amount of waste, right? Because there's barely any strawberry here. So you can do that. Another thing that you can do is you can kind of gather the greens and then take something like this, like a chopper, and cut the strawberry, and then you lose a little bit of strawberry there, right? And still is there, I have a little bit of stem in there, no big deal. So I think the first method is the least wasteful, but you get a better slice from this one because it's a cleaner cut, right? When you flip it over and start slicing it. Okay, either way works. You can experiment, see what you like best. So what I want to do, so sometimes you see these tarts. you know, you've seen them in the bakery, and sometimes they use all sorts of colorful fruits, which you can totally do. We're just using strawberries and blueberries because of 4th of July. We're doing like the, you know, the patriotic colors for our tart. But peaches would be really good on here. Lots of times you see the pretty kiwi sliced up on tarts like this. So whatever floats your boat, suits your fancy. And sometimes you see the strawberries whole, but I'm gonna cut them in slices and let the blueberries be whole, and the strawberries I want to create like a fan pattern on top. So that's what I'm gonna do. But again, this is your tart, so you can do it however you want. So I'm gonna cut pretty thin slices. Like I would say about, probably an 1/8, maybe a 1/4 of an inch, between an 1/8 and a 1/4 of an inch. That's what I did. Okay. So that's how I'm gonna cut all my strawberries. And you could probably do this with a butter knife, or maybe a serrated knife. You know, you don't need a big chef knife to accomplish this, for sure. Okay, so let's see how many strawberries I think I need to cut up. I've got some smaller ones and some bigger ones, which I thought the bigger ones would be better for the larger circle around the outside. We'll see how what my design is going to end up being. What kind of fruit are you guys using at home? Are you guys all using, are you going with the patriotic strawberry blueberry tart? Or did you decide to bring other fruits into the fold? Blackberries could be really pretty. You can get a little loose with the red and the blue, right? You could do raspberries, blackberries, black raspberries. Oh, okay. So I've got 4 strawberries cut here. I'm probably gonna do another 4, and I feel like that should be enough. Oh, see, that time I couldn't even pull the stem off that strawberry. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna taste one of my strawberries. Wow, and it's very sweet. So good. You know, sometimes strawberries can be kind of tart. I mean, all berries sometimes can be on the tartar side than the sweet side, but that strawberry was so delicious. All right, here we go. I'm gonna do one more from here. How's everything going for you guys at home? Any questions? Everybody's crust ended up coming out okay? Everybody's pudding turned out okay? Is it all delicious? Let me know. Don't forget to send us photos of your finished product or post them on here as comments. We love to see your creations. You know, shouldn't be all about me. Okay. So I think this is good. Maybe one more strawberry. Okay, just one more, and then I'm gonna assemble. And before we assemble, I wanna talk about the glaze that we're doing. So, and this part is totally optional. Okay, so there, I've got my pile of strawberries, I have my blueberries, and what you can do is mix a little bit of jam. You know how the fruit tarts, when you go to those fancy French bakeries, and they have the beautiful fruit tarts, and the fruit's shiny on top. So what they do to make it look like that is they brush the fruit with like a thinned jam. Typically it's like an apricot, but it can be any kind of more mildly colored jam. All I had was, I don't know if it was elderberry, I don't know what it is, but it's pink. But I figure that's okay because my fruits are red and blue. I don't think it's going to color the whole thing too much. So before I get out my tart crust and my pudding to assemble, I'm going to thin this a little bit to make it brushable. And then once I put the fruit on top, I'm going to gently brush it all with this jam. So, there. I just put just a little bit of water just to make it brushable, because mine was pretty thick. So see, now I can just dip this little silicone brush in there. And there we go. Maybe I even want it slightly thinner. I'm gonna put just a tiny bit more water. Okay, so I got that. That's ready to go. I'm gonna get my crust out. Actually, it's already out. I'm just gonna put it right here. I'm gonna get my pudding out. I'm gonna put that in the base. Now, we make other cream pies that are all about the cream, and so we fill it with more pudding. With this one, we wanted a pretty thin layer because the fruit is supposed to be such a central part. So you can always double the pudding recipe if you want it thicker, or you want to make just a vanilla cream pie, right? So delicious. Okay, so here is our pudding, and it's already pretty, you know, as far as chilling time for the pudding, it's preference. I mean, I think ultimately you would want to serve this chilled. So, and you could chill it in the crust, but again, the longer the pudding sits in the crust, the greater the risk that the crust is going to get soggy. So it's probably better to chill the pudding first. So if you want to eat this now, like if you're ready to just cut into it, like that's what we're going to do here in my home with my family, you can just assemble it now. I just put it in the fridge to chill a little bit. You could assemble it, stick it in the fridge for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then serve it. Or you could let your pudding chill for a few hours if you want to serve it tonight. Either way is fine. So you've got a lot of leeway, but definitely, you know, your pudding should be chilled. It's such a small amount though that it won't take very long to get completely chilled. My guess, it would probably be completely chilled within an hour, is what I would guess. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so I guess I'll just get another spatula out. I feel like I'm making too many dishes for myself to do here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put all of this deliciousness in the crust. And so again, mine doesn't have that film on top, but it was almost starting to form. And mine was only in the fridge for what, 10 minutes maybe? So if it's gonna be in there for any longer than that, you definitely wanna cover the surface with plastic wrap. So I've got all my pudding in here, and then you're just gonna spread it around, you know, with a spatula or a spoon like this to get it nice and even. And my pan is still pretty warm, so I'm probably gonna top this and then put the whole thing in the fridge for about an hour until we're ready to eat it. I think it's gonna be our lunch dessert. I think the plan over here is salad and then fruit tart. Sounds like a well-balanced meal to me. Okay, so I'm just using this spatula to, you know, spread this out in as thin a layer as possible. And then I'm gonna arrange my fruit on top. So this is what it looks like. Okay, sorry, there's a little reflection there. Okay, and now I'm gonna go ahead and put my berries. So let's see, what kind of pattern am I gonna do? I feel like I could, see, you could do it like overlapping. You could do them next to each other, right? This is where you really get to be an artiste and do it however you think is most beautiful. I'm gonna just do, I'm gonna do strawberries first, and I'm not gonna overlap them. I'm just gonna have them touching. I'll show you what I decided to do. And just because I'm doing it this way doesn't mean anything. And I'm gonna separate some of these bigger pieces so that, you know, I have bigger pieces with bigger pieces, smaller pieces with small. So this is a little smaller up here. So this is what I started doing. Okay, so just, you know, putting the strawberry pieces side by side with the tips pointing up toward the crust. Whoop! Oh no, I dropped it. That's okay. And I'm just gonna go around this whole way like this. And then I think I'm gonna do a layer of blueberries after that. And then I'll do another strawberry. So I'm gonna do a little alternating. I wonder if I'm gonna need more strawberries. We'll see. Okay, maybe one more right here. Okay, so I have my first round of berries, okay, a little strawberry, and now I'm gonna put some blueberries. Maybe I'll do I want them right up against? I am gonna put the blueberries right up against the row of strawberries. And I'm gonna do 2 rows of blueberries in a row. This is like food art. I mean, mine isn't really, but one could be very artsy with this. Very creative. Okay, so I've got almost 1 row of blueberries done, and like I said, I'm gonna do 1 more blueberry, then I'm gonna do another strawberry, then I'm gonna put a pile of blueberries in the middle. I think that's my plan. So let me show you. Okay, so I've got strawberries, then a circle of blueberries. Should I just do, maybe I'll just actually go strawberry now, again. Oh my gosh, this one looks like kind of a bit of a flower. Okay. Check it out. It's pretty, right? I don't know. And then I'm gonna put a pile of blueberries in the middle. I guess I could put a big strawberry sitting right in the middle of those blueberries. We'll see. I feel like there is a little space where I could do just that, guys. Check it out. Here we go. Oh my gosh. There. What do you think? That's not bad, right? So I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope you enjoy making it, and I hope you enjoy eating it and sharing it with your family. Thank you so much for doing this with me today. Have a great holiday weekend, and we'll be putting our the full recipe and a link to this video up on our website. I'll do that later today. So that you can make it whenever you'd like. And please do comment with your photos if you would like, because I would love to see what you did. Okay? Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.